Hey, everybody, welcome to Thursday Live. So glad that you're breaking away from whatever it is that's going on in your life right now to just take this breakaway moment to connect. And I've had so many of you tell me, and maybe you can put it in the comments even tonight, and I've told you, I absolutely love Thursday Live. You know, it's just something I've never really done in my ministry before. It's not a church service. I'm not preparing a talk or a lesson and some kind of, I'm not facilitating something. I'm just sharing. It's like this more raw conversation stemming out of my life. And so I'm thrilled that you've joined us. If it's your first time, welcome to Thursday Live. But you want your mind to be blown just a little bit. Tomorrow, March 12th, represents the 1 year anniversary of our very first Thursday Live. Our very first Thursday Live was March 12th, 2020. And I have to tell you, everything I love about Thursday Lives today, I, I hated that first Thursday Live. It represented everything I was against as it related to what I should be doing with the church. I mean, it was like suspending services. Are you kidding? We're the church. You know, the word for church is ecclesia, gathering, assembly together, and I'm suspending church. I have to tell you, that day was one of the most stressful and difficult and heartbreaking days of my entire ministry of leadership. It was difficult. And it was difficult on so many fronts. It was difficult on the personal front. I mean, come on. It was the world was falling apart as we knew it. It was scary. On a personal front, it's all of us, every single one of us, we were hearing the reports and hearing the news, and things were starting to spiral beyond our understanding. They don't call it a once in 100-year pandemic for nothing. It's like something none of us have ever experienced personally. And some of us were starting to panic over the job situation and the economics of that. What does that look like? And so and we didn't even have clarity on all that it represented, that there'd be isolation and lockdowns and no restaurants. It was like, but it was spiraling in personally. And then as the pastor of Northridge Church, where so many of us make this our church family, add to the personal stuff, I felt this significant responsibility to help and lead Northridge to be the church it needs to be for all of you personally as you were experiencing these things. And yet, they were talking about how we can't be in contact with people and all that. And I want to remind you, and first of all, can I just stop and say, can you believe it's been a year ago that Thursday Live, that first Thursday Live happened? In fact, while I'm taking this little bit of a break, would you put in the comments? I'd love to know how many of you were there for that very first Thursday Live, if you remember it. Because I wasn't in my office or in front of my fireplace at home or anything like that. I was standing on the platform of the auditorium here on Thursday night. For the first time standing on a camera like this, nervous and anxious and not knowing what was going to come of it, telling you what we were going to do as a ministry that night. So with that being there, what I thought would be interesting would be just to kind of reflect back on that day a year ago, kind of to just rehearse it in my mind with you. And I haven't prepared it, it's not written down, but it was a crazy day. Because we were following the crazy, stressful season of the glory of Christmas and church and all that was going on. And I had taken a couple of weeks off the platform, and I was preparing the new series that we were going to go into before the pandemic stuff hit. This was there, and we had decided that we would do a series called Life in Pieces. This was long before the pandemic. And I was getting ready for that series, and we were excited about it, doing all the different things that go with it. And then all this pandemic stuff started creeping into our consciousness and doing all this different stuff. And it started, you know, that little snowball that starts rolling down the hill and becomes an avalanche. Do you know every avalanche? Have you seen pictures of avalanches? Every single avalanche starts with a little piece of snow falling, you know, and then it becomes an avalanche. That's kind of how this pandemic was, right? It was, we heard these little things, and this little thing came out, and then it just kept going bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was like, and we're all spiraling. So by Thursday, March 12th, 2020, it was fever pitch territory. And they were starting to talk about millions could die from this thing, and it spread through social context, and you know, what's that like? And it's important for you to remember this. On March 12th, 2020, our governor had not closed the state. Our governor had not closed businesses. Our governor had not closed schools. None of that had happened yet. But the avalanche was crumbling, and the things that were being talked about. And as a pastor, I just remember getting to the place where I absolutely, I couldn't handle the fact that I'm supposed to be a shepherd of people, and there's a risk potential coming at them that could take so many lives. And I started feeling responsible, and it wasn't so much about now the point of church being to gather and connect and doing that. It was a point of, I'm a shepherd, and the church is here to protect people, care about people, and it just started overwhelming me. So I on the Thursday morning, a year ago, called together a leadership team meeting with all of our key leaders on the staff here, and began the conversation and just said, this thing's going crazy, and I think we need to talk about it. And before I say what I'm thinking, I need to hear what you guys are thinking, and what do you think it means about church and our campuses and our ministries and all of that. And it turned out to be, I didn't record the time, but it had to be an hour and a half, 2-hour meeting where we discussed every ramification, all the different things, all the different possibilities. And you know, because most people knew my passion was to have church, man. I want church. You know, they were kind of leaning, well, maybe we go through the weekend, we see what happens and all that. And finally, I remember just kind of saying, I actually think that we should contemplate, because we care about our people and we don't know what all this means right now. We just don't know. Maybe we should do the crazy and suspend our services. And then we had this long discussion, and it was hard for all of us. It was hard for me to say. And I just remember the voices on that phone, and each one, me finally going, what do you think? And them saying, and what do you think? And them saying, and what do you think? And then me finally saying, I think I'm there too. And we have to do it. And then we had to talk about, what does that mean? What's the process now going to be? Who do we have to call? How do we announce this? How do we communicate this? It was Thursday. And we had been marketing this new series, Life in Pieces. Can I tell you, as an aside, I didn't have to rename the series. So, I mean, we were now experiencing Life in Pieces for sure. But we didn't know how. Think about this. How do we communicate to all our volunteers? How do we communicate to all our families? How do we communicate to all of our ministry personnel? How do we communicate this? And we just started going nuts on this thing. And then we determined we'd get together later and have a call about it too, and discuss that. And we had to talk about how are we going to do services? Because we weren't going to stop doing services. So we had to go fully online. And we were ready for a big platform and church. And I don't know if you remember it, we actually had Life in Pieces puzzles on that stage. And we just darkened the whole auditorium and we turned everything around. And this took so much strategy from Thursday to Saturday when services would be. We changed everything. And we went from, I don't know if you remember this, and we had a lot to learn and we weren't really great at it at first, but although I think God really worked through us, we went from speaking outward to a big auditorium that the crowd online got to view to instead worshiping with you online and me speaking with you online, and it was intimate and it was personal and wherever you experience. And that all had to turn around in 2.5 days. And the same thing, how are we going to minister to kids and how are we going to minister to students and what were we going to do? How are we going to comfort people who are losing their jobs and how are we going to support? And it was a crazy time. And all of this is spiraling in my head. I'm having to suspend services. I don't suspend services. I just don't do it. And I have to suspend services. And I knew there were going to be people who thought I was, the Antichrist for suspending services. And then there were going to be people who thought we should do how it is. But the real thing on God, what do you want us to do? Here, James 1:5 says, if anyone lacks wisdom, ask God and he'll give it to you. And then the Bible also says, victory depends on having a multitude of counselors. And so, I was calling on God for wisdom. We as a staff were calling on God for wisdom, and we knew we had God's mind on this thing. For us, no judgment of other churches. We hadn't heard of one other church closing, suspending. The state hadn't. We just really believed it's what God wanted us to do as shepherds of this flock until we could get a grip on it and still do ministry best of our thing. And so the time was set. I was going to, and I had never done Thursday Live before. If you had told me I'd be doing Thursday nights before this happened, I'd say, no, I'm not. And now it's one of the things I love the most, as I've already said. But the time was set. We were going to do it Thursday night. And I don't even think we'd picked out 7:16 yet. I doubt it was 7:16. It was just one, we picked a time. We weren't smart enough. We were dealing with too many things to deal strategically. Hey, it's 16 words, 7:16. We didn't do that. But and I crafted my talk, got it all together, what I wanted to say in my mind, and a written manuscript, and then it was time to head over to the church to do it. And I don't know if you know this or not. I can't remember if I shared it publicly or not. I think I did. But on the way to the first Thursday Live, I got hit from behind in my car on the way here. Hit from behind. The single worst accident I've ever been in. This person was going, I don't know, had to be going 45, 50 miles an hour. Put it this way, it totaled my vehicle to the point where they had to totally redo it. It was like very expensive deal to repair. I guess if you total it, you have to throw the car away. Is that what happened? So it totaled the rear end of my vehicle. It took about $15,000 for the repair. It was crazy accident. And if you've ever been in an accident, the good news is I was sitting straight, but my head went, it was like boom. And then I had to wait an hour. Police came, deal with all this stuff, check us out about injuries. And then I had to get back in my car. It was the rear end that got hit. So I got back in my car and drove to the Plymouth campus at Northridge. And we went through all the logistics of all of this different stuff. And then God gave me the ability and the strength to get up and to basically tell you what now is a year old. We were suspending services, which, as you know, lasted for a lot of months. Our very first in-person services didn't happen again until the beginning of September. You remember that outside one that we did, and then we've been growing them since. So it was a year ago, this Thursday Live, that was our first one. And tomorrow's that anniversary. And can I just give you the ultimate lesson And I will say, if I could go back, boy, I think we would lead differently. We could make different decisions. I'm proud of the wisdom we had, but you know the old saying, hindsight's 2020. Yeah, there you go, 2020. Um, so if hindsight's 2020, I don't want any more hindsight, right? It's ridiculous. But can I just boil this thing down? It's already been a long Thursday Live, but let me boil this down to this one lesson. Can I? If I had to boil it down to one lesson that this whole experience taught me, because what's going to happen to the church? Well, God told us what was going to happen to the church. Jesus is going to build the church, and the gates of hell aren't going to prevail against it. But that's not what I was thinking. What's going to happen to the church? You know, what's going to happen to our people? What's going to happen to this? What's going to happen? Let me just tell you. Here's the lesson. God is faithful. He's faithful. And let me just read Lamentations 3:22 through 24. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And then I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. And Jeremiah's conclusion needs to be ours. Because I've learned how great his faithfulness is, that it can do what he's done, even in what we experienced in 2020. That's the reason to say the Lord is my portion. I don't need anything else. I don't have to live for anything else. I don't have to and should never serve anyone else. The Lord is my portion. So no matter what's going on, I'm going to wait on him. I'm going to trust him. And I hope all of us will take that lesson with us from 2020. So Thursday Live is here. Talk about God being faithful. He's given us a ministry that all of us love that wouldn't have happened without that. And there are many stories to go along the way. So what I want to do is, I'm going to pray in a few minutes, but I want to give you a couple of updates talking about God's faithfulness. We're starting Ridge Kids, and it's starting next weekend, actually. And this coming weekend, actually, March 13th and 14th. I'm sorry, it's March 12th, starting this weekend. And I have so many feelings about Ridge Kids starting back. The fact that we would have gone this long without kids ministry being in person, we've been doing a lot of stuff online. I'm so proud of our team, how much they've done online. But you want to put it in perspective? My granddaughter, Bradley, was born in October of 2019. And because of the pandemic and the suspension of Ridge Kids and all of that, her first time ever in church is going to be this weekend with Ridge Kids opening up. Now, talk about crazy important. We're opening Ridge Kids, and I'm so excited for the families that get to have their kids back, and the families we're going to reach, and the kids we're going to touch, and for my granddaughter Bradley, it's pretty special. But you know, to have Ridge Kids opening up, you know what has to happen? Our great team is leading, but volunteers have to come back. And I have to tell you, this is one of the things, talk about God being faithful. I'm in awe of our volunteers. Because the Ridge Kids volunteers are just emblematic of the commitment and sacrifice and generosity and love for ministry all our volunteers have. So we had 240 volunteers that we were calling back to the Ridge Kids ministry. And this blows my mind. 220 of the 240 volunteers, not staff, 220 of the 240 showed up for training this past week. It just, talk about faithfulness, talk about commitment, talk about hunger to serve. First of all, I'm so proud of you volunteers, all of you who are volunteers, but it makes me realize how hungry you are to serve. And just so you know, I'm so grateful for you and proud of you. What a neat thing. We're looking for every way we can open this ministry so you who love to volunteer can step back into your ministry volunteer roles. And I'm excited about that. But be praying for Ridge Kids, be praying for that ministry. I'm really, really excited about that. Also, Easter's coming, and Ridge Kids is going to be open for Easter. Isn't that great? And so we're starting this new emphasis called Show Them His Love. If you're a part of Northridge, you've received this in the mail, if we have your address in that. And if not, you can get these in person at any of our campuses. Guest Services has them, our offices have them. But Jesus came into this world out of love. God so loved the world. And so when we're celebrating his coming and his then death, burial, and resurrection, it's about his love. We want to show them his love. We want to introduce as many people as we can to his love. But if they're ever going to experience it through our church ministry, they first have to experience it through someone like you. Show them his love. And so this emphasis is about each and every one of us looking around us on a daily basis for a way that we can show an act of kindness. I mean, we could buy a cup of coffee for someone. Hopefully it doesn't snow anymore, but if it does, you could, shovel your neighbor's sidewalk, or something as simple as just a kind word. Or if you're eating at a restaurant, isn't it great having our restaurants reopening in Michigan now? And you could give a significant tip to your server. And then along with it, because we want it to mean something about introducing them to the hope of Jesus, you could give them one of the cards that come in this pamphlet. This one that I already ripped out says, "Hope this makes your day." And you can give a tip. It says, "Hope this makes your day better." And on the back of all these cards, and by the way, some of this is fun. Did this make you smile? I hope so. You went through a major historical event. Enjoy this today, But on the back is a website, northridgechurch.com/kindness, where they can go and they can have a word from our ministry, kind word into their heart, talk about Easter, and have all kinds of positive things. And it's all because you showed them an act of kindness that they take a look. And be creative. Think of ways that you can look for people who are needing an act of kindness and be that. And then try and give them another connection to finding out about the hope of Jesus at Easter through this. I just think I'm really excited about it. I hope you'll comment about that. Let us know the stories that are coming your way. And finally, I'm excited about this weekend as I continue the series on God. And I don't know about you, but it's really helping my vision clear up a little bit about him. Hope it's helping you to get back on the right view. But more than anything, can we just celebrate his faithfulness together? He's faithful, and he's proved it in this past year. This 1-year anniversary since that tragic first Thursday Live. All right, before we say goodbye, let me pray with you. Father, thank you so much for this moment that we have together. Thank you for your faithfulness. And I just pray that each and every one of us as individuals, and then us as a church family, a community together, I just pray that you would help us to realize your faithfulness. And as a result of it, help us to realize you're the only one we really need. You're our portion. Help it be true of each of us as individuals. Help it to be true of us as a church. And I'll just thank you for it. God, there are hurting people right now watching, and I just pray that you would pour your grace and all your faithfulness into their lives. Pray for Ridge Kids as it opens up. Oh, let us reach families and kids in a new way. Bless those volunteers. Thank you for them, God. And I just ask you to be with each one who's a part of this moment right now. Help them to experience your hope in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, I want to thank you so, so much for you being here with me. It means the world to me. And here's to another year, right? We get to go forward. So see you this weekend at church, I hope, in person or online. And definitely next week as we start our second year of Thursday Live.